Welcome back. All right, so I wanted to talk a bit about wrestling today. I do not need a whiteboard for this. I wanted to talk about why it is that I'm having a harder and harder time actually deciding, okay, I'm going to watch a wrestling show, being Raw, SmackDown, or anything AEW. Now, I would say NXT as well, but NXT shows for some reason seem to be the most entertaining to me personally. They're not too long. It feels like there's more wrestling. The backstage segments feel a little more organic, and it's fun. And that sense of fun in NXT is sometimes missing from Raw. It's sometimes missing from SmackDown. SmackDown, of course, is the show that WWE clearly doesn't care nearly as much about as Raw, and I know people will say, well, we understand that. I don't. I don't, because SmackDown has some very good wrestlers on it. And so when I hear it's not being taken as seriously, what I'm hearing is the writers are just phoning it in because they don't care. You can create stars if you need to. And I think with some of the wrestlers on SmackDown, if you gave them the time, I think there's way too many backstage segments that go for too long in WWE. I think the half an hour long segment at the start of every show where people just stand around in a ring and talk, it's played out. I want it to stop. I am always shocked when there's actually a match within the first half hour of a show, which is wrong. The other issue WWE has, and I haven't seen anybody online talking about this, is, so Raw was on Monday. Obviously, right? Well, there's six hockey games on Monday, so I didn't watch Raw. I didn't really bother with it. And then Monday night, after hockey was done, and while my wife was having a shower before turning in for the evening, I was like, all right, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to watch the highlights. They put together a 10-minute highlight reel that tells you almost everything that went on. And then the next morning, I can watch Ups and Downs with Simon Miller on What Culture, which tells me what I missed. And that's it. I don't need to spend 3 hours watching, three hours watching a wrestling show every week. It's just insane. Every match is 20 minutes. Every match has some screwy finish, so the 20 minutes don't matter. And I always see the comments of, well, there was some great wrestling. Who cares? The end, it didn't matter. If the ending is already going to be screwy, then whatever happened during that 20 minutes doesn't matter. And every match doesn't have to be 20 minutes. I'm old enough to remember a time where if a match spanned enough time to go past a commercial break, that was considered an epic match. Where when they came back from break, they'd be like, this match is still going. And you'd be like, holy crap, this match has been going on for 15 minutes. 15 minutes was a time limit for wrestling matches on the NWA shows. So you go 15 minutes, and then it was done. And nobody went, why did they only give them 15 minutes? Or that match was only 10 and a half minutes. Well, they buried them. We're in a really weird world right now where a match that's 5 minutes or less is considered a burial, which I don't think it is. I think the other part of the problem I have is that whoever gets title shots just seems to be whatever. They don't seem to take titles that seriously, which brings me to another problem. There's too many damn titles. There's way too, and when I heard AEW was creating another belt, I'm like, why? Why are you creating another title when I'm having a hard time figuring out who has every title now? Now we're going to bring back the national championship from the NWA. Oh my God, why? What, you have an international champion? That's like, oh my gosh, you already have ROH as well with a bunch of titles that you're and then you've got Mercedes Moné with 13 titles, which means it doesn't mean anything. I think it looks ridiculous. I think that, I know there's people who are going to say, well, it elevates those other companies. Does it? Because she's just walking around with those belts. She's not promoting those other companies. She doesn't really talk about where the belts are from on TV. Just, I got another belt. And it doesn't mean anything. I remember Becky Lynch, 2 belts back. And that seemed to matter. It seemed to mean something. But now you've got Mercedes running around with 13 titles. And they don't mean anything. It doesn't matter. I've seen people, I saw a post on Facebook. Part of the reason I'm doing this video is a post I saw on Facebook, which is admonishing fans who didn't like the blood and guts match with the women who enjoyed the Attitude Era. I didn't particularly enjoy the way women were treated during the Attitude Era. It doesn't mean I want to see them in a blood and guts match. I mean, if you enjoy that kind of wrestling, fine. I will never begrudge people that like that. I don't. The reason I don't is simple. The violence, when you'd watch a match back in the day, me being old and everything, seemed more realistic. And it wasn't as staged. Like, you'd have guys outside the ring, and you'd have a guy with the blade, right? And the guy would blade, and then they'd be bleeding. And sometimes they'd blade a little too much, and you'd be in an awkward position where it was pretty gross to watch. But it felt more organic. And it felt more like it wasn't just some stage thing. Like, look what we're going to do. Hey, look, these three guys are in the corner. They're going to do something neat. Look, these three guys that are all fighting with each other, they're going to work together and do something. They're all going to go through this table that's covered in thumbtacks. It's going to be awesome. That's the backyard wrestling stuff that Mick Foley made kind of well known back in the day. And I don't particularly have any interest in it. Like, CZW, I've never liked. And it's too bad because there's been some really good wrestlers that have come out of it. But I don't. And the problem I have with it is that when you have so many matches that are all bloody and all, hardcore, it takes something out of it for me personally. It doesn't have any impact anymore. It doesn't matter. It's like back when I was in my early 20s and I decided, I'm going to watch all the Friday the 13th movies. And I'm gonna take notes of when each, kill happens and where, and when you get the jump scares and what that jump scare is. So I started with Friday the 13th Part 1, and I went all the way to Friday the 13th Part 8. I watched them all in a week. By the end of that week, I felt nothing. The movies were kind of icky to me, and I realized every single movie was essentially exactly the same thing. The jump scares would happen at the exact same point in the movie. All the kills would happen at almost the exact same point in the movie, and it just kind of wrecked Friday the 13th for me for a while. When every wrestling match involves, thumbtacks and, all these extreme things, and, oh, look, Jon Moxley's bleeding again, it loses all impact. You shouldn't be looking there and going, of course he's bleeding again, of course. Like, that's why I didn't like Abdullah the Butcher back in the day. This is why I didn't watch that stuff. That's why, while I enjoyed parts of ECW, there were also parts I really did not enjoy. And ECW still, at times, told pretty interesting stories, or at least it was different. And I can't get there with AEW Blood and Guts. I can't get there with WWE's long shows. Like, the only way I can watch a WWE show now is that, and all of them are posted on Netflix for me here in Canada, for you with a VPN, just something to think about, right? Not that Stephanie McMahon didn't suggest the same thing, but with all the WWE shows on Netflix, it means I can go, how long is this match? And I can just fast forward through it. It is magic. That as long as I haven't seen like spoilers, I can go, I don't know, I feel like, how long is this? Oh my God, this match is 25 minutes. I don't enjoy it. And it's weird because having watched as many WrestleMe videos as I have now, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So the WrestleMe guys, when they get their YouTube earnings at the end of this month, you're welcome. Because I've watched a lot of their stuff, and I'm a YouTube Premium, so they're probably getting at least a couple bucks on my YouTube Premium subscription this month. And it reminds me how I used to really enjoy it, and what I really enjoyed about it. And it's led to me, unfortunately, explaining this to a wife that does not enjoy that wrestling. She does not want to watch it with me. So now she's stuck with me going, okay, I've got to watch. Like, I watched the one where it talks about Kevin Nash being Oz and how the whole Oz thing went down. I watched the one with her on Jake the Snake Roberts and Randy Savage, the Cobra incident, right? Everybody remembers that feud. And there's all these really memorable feuds. Who can forget when Rick Rude decided, I'm going to get a pair of pants and put Jake the Snake Roberts' wife on the back of him? And Jake's like, you better not. And then he did. And we don't see that kind of thing now. Everything's just everybody's working together, and everything's so planned, and everything's just the writers think, and the writers think, and the writers think, and it sanitizes everything in WWE. And in AEW, it feels like everybody's going, wee-haw, it's the Wild West, and we can do whatever the hell we want. And everybody's in the Don Callis family, so who cares? I thought we learned from the NWO. We learned when you have 86,000 members of a faction, Nobody cares about that faction. Everybody's tired of it. And yet there's Don Callis. I want to add members to my family. Can you name every member? Don, if you can't name every member of your family, you have to go let 3 of them go right now. Right now, you have to let 3 of them free from whatever it is that Don Callis has over them. And I've always enjoyed wrestling. I've always enjoyed watching it. And right now, WWE shows are too long and tedious. I love watching the highlights, though. Maxine Dupree winning, good. I'm very happy for her. I led an audible cheer when I saw her get the 3 count, even though it's still a screwy finish. Like, they couldn't at least give her the win. They'd had to have AJ Lee get involved, so it's a tainted win. But every win on the show is tainted, unless it's Gunther destroying somebody, which I appreciate. Because it's like, okay, good, somebody who can win a match fairly, finally. We just don't see that enough, because they're protecting the talent. You can put somebody over clean and still be protected. You can still find a way to put somebody over clean. If you can't find a way to put somebody over clean without it being some, screwy because you're worried that your spot isn't protected, I don't know how wrestling works anymore. You can put somebody over clean. Like, you can have somebody hit like a devastating maneuver kind of out of nowhere and get a 3 count without making the other guy look weak, without fans going, well, he got pinned last week. And nobody distracted him, so we're not cheering for this guy anymore. One of the biggest fan favorites back right around the start of the Attitude Era, one of my favorite wrestlers of that time, 2 of them. I'll talk about 2 of them. 2 of my favorites were Al Snow, who never won a damn thing, and I loved Barry Horowitz. When Barry Horowitz got a win, I was like, oh my gosh, Barry Horowitz won a match. Oh my gosh, I was so excited. I was so happy. I remember talking to friends of mine like, Barry Horowitz won. All right, that's it. Back pat fever, because Barry Horowitz would pat himself on the back. So when wrestling federations online were starting, and it started out where people would pretend they were WWF wrestlers, I was like, I'm going to be Barry Horowitz. And people were like, why would you want to be Barry Horowitz? And I'm like, because when I write a storyline, and my storyline works as Barry Horowitz, it's going to be even funnier. And so my character of Barry Horowitz, I outwrote the person who was portraying Bill Goldberg in them. I was so happy because the guy who had called himself Bill Goldberg, I'm like, I'm a better writer than he is. It's not even close. And I won. And I thought, the person who has to write this wrestling match now, where Barry Horowitz beats Bill Goldberg, good luck. And I did. And then like, I kind of ran out of steam after that. I'm like, I can only go down from here. What else is there for me to do? So the idea that if wrestlers lose matches, fans will lose interest is insane. The fact that if a wrestler loses, we're not protecting him, then there goes that asset. Does Sami Zayn ring a bell? What about Cesaro? Cesaro lost every match he had in WWE for ages. And yet everybody loved him. So I do not understand the writing. I do not understand the plans. And I think there's too many belts. I think that 5 matches over a 4-hour pay-per-view is insanity. I think the amount of times they go, hey, everybody, did you know we got a pay-per-view coming up? Yeah, you mentioned it 3.5 minutes ago. And you're going to mention it again in 3 minutes. And then you're going to mention it in 10 minutes. And then you're going to mention it in 15. Can we just have the event that we're having on now? Because what you're telling me is what's happening now doesn't mean squat, because what's actually important is what's coming up later. And I just find it very, very frustrating, a very frustrating experience when the commentators are constantly like, don't forget, in 2 weeks we got a pay-per-view. I know, you just had one 3 days ago, and you're going to have... Why do we have these weekly events if they don't mean anything? We're going to have a #1 contenders match. Jey Uso's in it. Okay, so Jay's going to win, because it's always Jey Uso. It's always got to be Jay. Yeah, I'm one of those people online that... And I feel bad for Jay, you know? I think Jey Uso's a good guy. I think he's got a great character. I understand people don't like his wrestling matches, and this is where the 20-minute matches come in. Back in those days, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Jey Uso would be coming out to the ring, he'd be fighting jobbers, or he'd be fighting guys like Iron Mike Sharp, and he'd be winning in 5 minutes. He wouldn't be in the ring long enough to get exposed. One of the reasons Bill Goldberg got over so much was because all of his matches were like 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Because they knew if they put him in the ring for 10 minutes, he'd be exposed as not being very good. Jey Uso's in the ring for too long. I don't get mad at Jey Uso. I get mad at the booking, where it's like, you guys are not, for a company that's so worried about protecting all your wrestlers, you're not protecting Jey Uso from being exposed as not being able to go for 25 minutes like some of these other guys. You can't put him in a match with CM Punk and expect him to be able to get to that level. CM Punk is on a whole other level. Same with Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is a fantastic wrestler. He can just manipulate the fans with the palm of his hand. Kevin Owens, absolutely amazing wrestler, can go a lot longer than you would think he could when you first see him. Physically, he's in so much better shape than he looks like he is. So there are a cornucopia of reasons why I think it's just all being run poorly. I blame TKO. And TKO coming out and saying, well, you know, we're not gonna lower our ticket prices because families are coming out. That's not necessarily the target audience, or however they phrased it. Are you kidding me? Go to a wrestling event. Go to an indie event. They're all families. There's young kids everywhere. So what TKO has done is they've taken over WWE and they're trying to turn it into something else and alienate their core audience to do it while expecting to make more money. And it's predetermined. So the people they're trying to appeal to are the same people that say, I'm not watching that crap, it's fake. And Toni Storm's getting stapled in the ass. And she gets staples in the ass, and she allows it. She sits there and yeah, the staple gun thing, really, I'm like, that's stupid. You can see. These women could move out of the way, and they're like, okay. Ow. Well, then move. Get out of the way. Smack her in the face. Kick the staple gun out of her hand. What the hell? Like, wrestlers don't, because it's all planned, because we have to go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have to go through all these step by step by step. Nothing looks organic. Nobody reacts the way you actually would if you were trying not to get punched in the face. I don't know how many times I've seen a wrestler just turn around and they get kicked in the head. And I'm like, okay, they had a second and a half there to block it. And the way wrestling used to be, if you're that sloppy, your opponent would take it out on you. You miss a drop kick, your opponent would look at you and go, pfft. The only one I see doing that's Samoa Joe. It's the only one, and I feel like that's kind of made up too. So I wanted to vent a little bit today and just explain why you haven't seen a lot of wrestling content and why I'm watching a lot of the Wrestle Me videos, which go back to what wrestling was like in the 90s, early 2000s. So I remember, right, that's when I liked it. That's when there was some stupid stuff that would happen, and there was stuff I didn't like. But like the post I saw today was like, if you went for the HLA, and if you watch the Eric Bischoff, you know that this has been about 2 minutes, the whole HLA thing, nobody liked that. Nobody thought that, like, nobody thought that was entertaining. We all went, this is demeaning, this is stupid. So it is not a matter of, well, you have to let them staple each other's heads to the mat, and you have to let them, you know, throw thumbtacks through each other's eyeballs and whatever the hell else. Or else you're saying you supported them being treated like, you know, objects in wrestling in their underwear. No, it's not an either-or kind of situation for me personally. But that being said, I'm done for now. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Yeah, I'm a man of a few opinions today when it comes to the wrestling, because I love wrestling, but I really wish it wasn't so long and drawn out, and that it was more like it used to be. I'd watch wrestling, I'd watch All-Star Wrestling every Saturday. You'd come back from commercial, the ring announcer would be in the ring, you'd hear the bell, they'd announce the wrestlers, they'd have a match, the match would finish, they'd have some little interview segment, they'd go to commercial, they'd come back, ring announcers in the ring, the bell would sound, another match, backstage segment. Sometimes you'd have them in a square in the corner during the match talking about what they're going to do and who they are and introducing themselves to the fans. I miss that format. I don't know what happened. Now it's just, here's a match, and for the next hour and a half, all we're going to talk about is the bloodline and how you need to watch the pay-per-view rather than watching this. Oh, and there are so many wrestlers that never get on TV because it's just so few matches and so many wrestlers. It's dumb. But this is just one man's opinion. You guys can let me know why I'm wrong in the comment section below. That's why it's there. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. This rant has been brought to you by nobody because I don't do sponsorships. So you're not going to hear an ad read from me in the middle of a video. But it does help when people watch the ads during videos, because that's kind of how the ad rates work, and how YouTubers, for some, how that income is made. So thank you guys so much for your support. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. But thank you guys so much for everything. It is greatly appreciated, and I feel a little better. Now I'm going to go watch some hockey. I will talk to you again soon.